This video is going to be for AV338 Unit 3 discussion topic number 1, which is the air transportation analysis spreadsheet. Before we interact with the spreadsheet, it's best that you understand the scenario and the company characteristics. All of the information is provided for you. You simply have to total the columns, trying to show the relationship between the various costs. Aegis Systems has 4 locations. Headquarters in Orlando, Florida, a manufacturing facility in Peoria, Illinois, second manufacturing facility in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and an assembly plant in Springfield, Missouri. Due to tax benefits and land acquisition, Aegis benefits financially from all 4 locations. However, supervision and quality control and growth can be a challenge due to the distance between the different facilities. Travel consumes a lot of the time and expenses of the corporation. The average round-trip flight from Orlando, Florida to all facilities is roughly 5 hours. Therefore, when we look at all the calculations on the spreadsheet, it's going to be based on an average of 5 hours of flight time. That will be our baseline. Again, your objective is to calculate and analyze data for sections 2 and 3 in this air transportation analysis. Okay, now that you have a good idea of the company characteristics, we're going to look at the spreadsheet. And the first thing that you should note is that we have 3 tabs. We have aircraft average costs per hour. We have on-demand flight history, which is going to incorporate mostly the charter service, and then we're going to compare it to the airline flight history. Let's look at the first tab, because the first tab is what we're going to be concerned about in Unit 3. We're trying to establish a baseline, and then we'll apply that baseline to the other 2 history tabs, and that will be in Unit 4. Within your career, you will have to perform at least one air transportation analysis if you are going to be working in the aviation field, and you should have an understanding of how the real world constructs them. Okay, let's go to the aircraft costs. As you can see, we have 3 basic spreadsheets. We have the title up above here, which gives the corporation the actual name of the report. Air Transportation Analysis, Aegis Systems LLC. It's based on average flight hours and aircraft type. The first tab is going to be for $5, and then we have $6 and then $7. We also at the bottom have the manufacturer statistics. The 5 choices that you are giving this particular company are these aircrafts. And this is all pulled and researched from their databases and their advertisement. These costs include average fuel, maintenance, and crew operational expenses. In other words, the salaries of your pilots or maybe a flight attendant. Each of these aircraft, they have a capacity. They could range anywhere from 8 passenger seats up to 12 or even more. You're looking at lighter business jet aircrafts to transport employees from the various locations. Now, your job in this assignment is going to be to calculate everything in the highlighted areas to get exactly what the baseline cost is going to be for each of these aircraft so that you have an hourly rate. And then you'll look at the history to see how many people are flying and what kind of aircraft capacity that you need. After you analyze the data, you'll determine whether on-demand or commercial airline is better for the corporation. On-demand meaning charter, fractional, or full ownership versus airline travel. Let's look at the formulas that you're going to have to put together. First, we want to make sure that you have the columns correct. You want to make sure that column A is giving you the aircraft type. In column B, the average fuel cost per hour will be at $5 per gallon. The average fuel consumption per hour for that particular aircraft, the passenger capacity. You want to also see column E is going to be the average flight time per trip, which we said was 5 hours. Let's see, column F is going to be the average operating cost per trip at $5 per gallon, and then the average cost per passenger at full capacity of that particular aircraft. So we have to calculate these numbers and use basic Excel formulas and functions to get this, to analyze the data. You'll be using this throughout your career. One of the basic skills is to understand the functions in Excel. So if you look here, we will average the fuel cost at $6 a gallon. We have the fuel consumption at 200 gallons per hour and an average flight time at 5 hours per trip. Okay, in B17, you're going to click on the formula bar. This is what they call the formula bar here. You're going to put the equal sign that tells Excel that it is formula that you are writing. You're going to multiply the fuel consumption times the $6 per hour, which you'll just put in 6, and you'll hit enter. We have a figure for the average fuel cost per hour at $6 per gallon, which was the fuel consumption per hour times $6, and we got $1,200 per hour for the Cessna Citation. Now we want to populate the same formula into the below cells for the other aircraft. So we're going to click on the cell that we already wrote the formula for. We will shade the cells below, and we will perform what they call a fill down function, which is edit, fill, down. Populated all of the below cells, and it calculated the exact same cells that we had for the first one. The first one took C17, which was 200, and it multiplied it by $6. The below cell took 180 consumption per hour and multiplied it by $6. And it continued to do that for each cell because we utilized the fill down function. Next, we want to calculate average operating cost per trip at $6 per gallon. We already know that per hour for the Cessna Citation, we're spending $1,200. So all we have to do is multiply that number by the average flight time per trip, which is 5 hours. We will put the equal sign in the formula bar. We will click on B17, then multiply, which is the asterisk, and we will multiply it by 5 hours of flight time. We can click on the green check mark, and it gives us $6,000 of cost per trip, the average trip being 5 hours, and that's what we have for the Citation. We want to populate the aircraft below and use the exact same formula. So we will click in shade. We will perform the fill down function again, fill down, and it gives us the average operating cost per trip at $6 per gallon. We can simply double click on the cell and it shows us highlighting the cells that it was calculating, and then the green check mark again, and it will bring it back to the display. Next, we have to calculate average cost per person at full capacity. Now, this is the most important calculation because it's telling us the cost of each of those seats in that airplane when it flies. We always want to put the airplane at full capacity because it will lower the cost of each trip per person. Let's calculate it. Again, we're going to tell Excel that it is a formula by putting an equal sign. We now know that the cost per trip for that airline for a Cessna Citation is $6,000. So we can take the $6,000 and divide it by the capacity of seats in that particular airplane. So therefore, when we have a capacity of 10 people in that Cessna Citation on an average flight of 5 hours, the cost per person is $600. Now, we want to populate the cells below it. So we'll click and hold, shade down, release, and then go to edit, fill down. And it gives us the average cost per passenger at full capacity. And just a quick look, it looks like, let's see, 450 is for the Gulfstream and the Challenger. So you already know the lowest cost of the two airplanes, but you also have to look at the capacity. They are also the airplanes with the highest capacity, and that's why they are less expensive per passenger. Okay, we're going to finish by just manicuring the spreadsheet because when we calculated, we lost our borders. So we will simply take and shade our borders again, and we will go to Format, Cells. We want the thick line. Line style is going to be thick, and we want it all to be outlined, and we hit OK. Now, we have the spreadsheet for 6 gallons completed on the first tab. Your job now is to complete both the $6 spreadsheet and the $7 spreadsheet. The same formulas that we use, the same procedures. Next week, we will look at the second tab, and we will perform the history for on-demand flight history, and we will also look at the airline history for the corporation. And we will determine by the history with the cost, the average cost per seat, what is going to be the best aircraft for this corporation. We're trying to establish these baselines so you can then make a presentation. I hope this helped. Complete the first tab for Unit 3, and we'll move on to the second and third tab next week.